Are the Raiders ready to make noise in Pete Carroll's first year? We're breaking down the state of the roster today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One issue, big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, I would say happy Monday to you and everyone, but I know for a fact any Toronto Maple Leafs fans that are listening are not having a happy Monday. But I do think the Leafs were up 2-0, conference semis, losing game 7, lose game 5 and 7. They give up 6 goals in each game. I do think it's weird that, like, Toronto is getting lambasted as, like, colossal failures, though. Like, you were a team that went to game 7 against the reigning Stanley Cup champions in game 7, and
I think it's just a long stretch of disappointment, right? Like where they blow it continuously.
But this year's Leafs have nothing to do with 1990 Toronto Maple Leafs, you know? Like,
I hear you on that, but don't you feel those lessons apply in football where we always say, like, don't make the team pay for the sins of 10 years ago, but we still do it, right? It's still part of the deal, man.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
I'm as a Sabres fan, I'm supposed to, like, be happy that the Toronto Maple Leafs have.
It's a big rivalry, right?
I guess, yeah, but
like,
I mean,
a regional thing too.
Oh, they're losing in the playoffs, and the Sabres haven't made the playoffs in 100 years. So,
right,
you know, you got to love the pissing contest that exists. So I can't really get into it, man.
Trying to think of a good way to tie this back to the Raiders, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't have one.
Well, the Vegas Golden Knights a few years ago won the Stanley Cup. We'll see when the next championship gets to Las Vegas as we put the Raiders under the microscope today. We are doing the AFC West this week. We kicked off our roster assessment series last week with the NFC North. The AFC West, it's your week in the sun. And what Kyle and I do is we assess and evaluate every single roster, every player, and we put every player into a bucket. The buckets are roster cornerstones, quality starters, rookies, adequate starters, replacement level, quality depth, non-roster caliber, incomplete evaluation, or a practice squad developmental player. And every bucket has a score, a numeric value to it. Each position is factored in terms of importance. And at the end of this project, we're going to be able to stack up the league and really talk about who's got the best squads across the NFL. And so the Raiders are under the microscope today.
We're going to start with the skill players, where there's a lot of new for Las Vegas, where you look at the running back position and they sign Raheem Mostert, 1 year removed from he was 1,000 yards as a 31-year-old back. And then this past year got banged up pretty much right off the jump, had a ball security issue midseason. And I don't want to say that's all she wrote for Raheem Mostert in Miami, but the wheels fell off the bus there very quickly after a record-setting 2023. Ashton Jeanty, obviously their first draft pick. Jack Bech as a wide receiver addition to go with a couple of rookies on day 3 at the wide receiver position to kind of buoy Jacoby Myers as kind of the most attractive and stable piece of that group. Last year's rookie sensation Brock Bowers, and headlined by a trade and new franchise quarterback or perceived franchise quarterback reuniting Geno Smith with Pete Carroll.
And, Jacoby Myers is kind of an underrated player. He had 1,000 yards last season. I've always liked Jacoby Myers. I think he'll be a stabilizing piece of this offense, but it's all about the youth here and the skill players. Of course,
I think you could say that about the whole roster, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got some really high draft picks in Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty, who are going to be really the guys for this offense. There's going to be a lot of volume to those guys. Obviously, we already seen that with Brock Bowers last year, and it just really exciting young player.
Can I call timeout real quick?
Sure.
Ashton Jeanty combined targets and touches with Brock Bowers targets.
400 plus.
I'd smash the over. I think it might be closer to 500 when it's all said and done.
It's like, a lot.
If Jeanty carried the ball 350 times and then Bowers got 150 targets, would you bat an eye?
Oh, that's 600, right?
No, it's 500. But that also doesn't include any targets for Jeanty in the passing game.
I wouldn't bat an eye. That's a lot, right?
Yeah. But you say it's running through those guys. I agree. Yeah. It should be running through those guys.
I don't want to sleep on Myers, who's going to get some run. And it feels like Jack Bech is really positioned to have a significant role as a rookie. I know that the Dynasty fantasy world is very excited about this landing spot for Jack Bech and, Geno Smith, the guy that we'll see how they play offense here. You'd like to think they're going to want to run the ball. That's a Pete Carroll staple. But, Geno Smith's also a quarterback that's experienced throwing the ball a ton. And, the ball's got to go somewhere. And I feel like, if Bech is top 3 on this team in targets as a rookie, I don't think I'd be surprised by that.
Yeah, I think so. And as I look at the group, I've got Myers down as a sufficient level starter. I won't say adequate, because we had that debate last week. We're going to call it sufficient level starters. Although you knocked it out of the park when you said it.
Yeah, I know. I'm really trying to focus in on that. I'm trying to embrace a growth mindset here.
Obviously, you have Jack Bech as a rookie. Brock Bowers, I already have down as a roster cornerstone. Ashton Jeanty is a rookie, but expectation is this time next year he will be classified as a roster cornerstone. I would not be surprised if when we do the scoring for this roster, Joe, if we advocate to score Jeanty as not just any old rookie.
Yeah, well, he'll get points. He'll get points.
Because rookies, with the way that we do the scoring, in theory, if you're a rookie and you have no proof of concept at the NFL level, we give you 0, where you're not helping the grade or hurting the grade. But Jeanty's one of those guys I think we both have enough conviction in. Will really help move the needle. I'm interested to see what ends up happening with Michael Mayer. There was some trade buzz that existed earlier in the offseason. He spent some time away from the team last year for rumors, but unspecified specifics around the nature of why he was away from the team. They got the youth upside play in Dante Thornton as a big time down the field, height, weight, speed type guy. With Trey Tucker, who I think is a quality depth player for a wide receiver room, as another field stretching type of player. So they got some intriguing options. I think the depth is sufficient. I'd probably feel better if they had another proven player at wide receiver, but as you said, this is with Bowers being the guy that's kind of counts towards that group, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
I think they have enough guys that I'm excited about, though, where I don't look at their ability to have guys that can win some matchups and feel like they're limited in that regard.
Yeah, I do wonder if this is a team that we're going to come out of this season or at some point during the season thinking, boy, they need an X receiver. With Bech, Myers, Tucker really, I guess, probably optimized in the slot. Are we going to be wondering, okay, who's going to be that X receiver in this offense? But
don't expect it to be Dante Thornton, right? Like it's just there's nowhere near enough route running acumen there for him to be somebody who can win through contact in the contact window in isolation away from the passing strength and win routes. I just don't think he's that kind of player right now.
Yeah, he'll help stretch the field. I think that's what you should hope he can provide initially. And obviously there's a lot of physical upside, and we'll see how he develops. Obviously a big jump coming out of the Tennessee offense. So that's the skill players. We're going to turn our attention to the trenches, O-line, D-line. On the other side of it, folks, be sure to stick with us. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy to see place. I'll tell you what, the Skylight calendar has been a game changer for my family. I got a 5-year-old, I got a 1-year-old, and these kids got activities, man. Whether it's some gymnastics, swim, dance, there's all kinds of stuff any given day of the week. And this calendar helps us stay organized. And I'll tell you what, my wife certainly appreciates not having to remind me all the time about these happenings. I can see the entire week clearly on that beautiful 15-inch HD screen. So check it out, folks. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylight.com/NFL. That's skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/NFL.
Next time we have a alpaca over at the house, you want me to let you know so you put it on your Skylight cal?
Yeah. I thought it was 2 of them. Did you have 2 alpacas?
No, it was 1 alpaca and a mule.
A mule, a couple ponies, guinea pig, duck, goose,
some
chicken.
Local farm has something where you can bring some animals over. It was a end of school year party for my 4-year-old.
Yeah.
So
I'm at a one of those zero gravity trampoline parks at a birthday party. And Kyle FaceTimes me over the weekend and shows me his backyard, and my guy's got a zoo. He got a zoo in the backyard.
Joe's at the bounce house, and I'm ear to ear with an alpaca, FaceTiming Joe.
You know,
it's
never know what you're going to find yourself doing as a parent of young kids.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. One thing I do know is when I look at the Raiders roster, the group I'm most excited about is probably this offensive line.
Yeah.
When you consider the 2 day 2 draft picks that they've added, in addition to a guy with good experience and is not playing his best football anymore, but Alex Kappa as another ad. You think about, they added Charles Grant, Caleb Rogers, and Alex Kappa to last year's offensive line group.
Casual. Yeah, it's good.
I like what we're working with here.
Yeah, no doubt.
So you talk about the Pete Carroll run the ball mentality, and you got a group up 5 of Colton Miller that I think is still a quality starter. Jordan Meredith, Jackson Powers Johnson, and Dylan Parham. I would grade all 3 of those guys as sufficient level starters. Meredith was kind of the breakout player last year. Obviously, JPJ was a rookie last year. A right tackle spot. I mean, they're invested in DJ Glaze. We'll see how that ends up playing out. We'll see if Charles Grant or Caleb Rogers. I don't think that necessarily bodes well for Dylan Parham to get a contract extension.
Right.
They spent 2 threes on guys that can be, guard, tackle, flex type guys. But you're looking at, I'm looking at the 1 through 8 here. And if you told me my 8th guy has to play 500 snaps this year, I'm not really stressing it all that much. It would be one of the better O-line 8s that you're going to get, in my opinion, in the league this year.
I'm with you. I think this is a good looking offensive line. I like those 2 draft picks that they added. And that feels really important to kind of stabilize this offense with Geno Smith coming in year 1 with this team. They're going to have to find their identity, which we think will be running the football. It's going to be throwing the ball to Brock Bowers, but I think kind of sorting out the rest of the offense is what you're interested in seeing come together. This offensive line is going to give them a chance to function and operate. And there's a good mix of, like you've mentioned, there's some established players here. There's some youth. I'm always fascinated when there's a new general manager takeover and what type of convictions they have about guys they didn't bring in. And so I think you called out Dylan Parham. That's, kind of entering the last year of his rookie deal where I think he's a sufficient level starter.
Yeah.
But this team didn't, these guys, Spytech didn't draft DJ Glaze or your Jackson Powers Johnson. I think they're probably pretty satisfied with him. But those 2 early picks kind of says we want to get our guys here. And I'm curious to see how these battles play out. Even Alex Kappa, who had a long time with Spytech in Tampa, there's a few bucks they gave him. It wasn't a come over here for nothing type deal. So I'm interested to see what type of competitions exist here and where they land, because there's a good mix of young players that weren't brought in by this regime, and then kind of very quickly investing as well. So good group. I'm interested to see how it sorts out.
I'm kind of interested if once they get to camp, I wonder if they cash out. and trade? Like, do you want to carry this many guys? What do you think Parham would get on the open market, and would you be interested in playing the compensatory pick game next offseason for a pick in 27? Or like, if you like one of these rookies and Parham's in a contract year, there's more interest now in interior offensive linemen than there's been in quite some time as far as prioritizing that position group. So it's a really interesting, like you said, the infusion of guys with some guys that you have some decisions to make with that are on an expiration date. Really, it's just interesting.
Yeah,
that they brought that many guys in capable of doing that.
Well, I think that kind of solidifies the conversation where we're even inclined to consider, well, I wonder if they think about trading this guy who's been a 3-year starter since they drafted him and looks pretty good. Okay, defensive line. Man, we got a lot of potential here, right?
Yeah, we do.
We just got
questions as well.
Yeah, we got three of our 4 starters are coming off of very significant injuries. The idea of Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, Adam Butler, Malcolm Kuntz, love it. And I mean, there's a lot of pass rush ability there.
Mm-hmm.
What are we getting? What can you confidently say right now you're getting out of Wilkins, Crosby, and Kuntz coming off injuries? I mean, I still have Crosby graded as like a cornerstone. I'm not super concerned there, but we got to see this come together. And I think that Kuntz spot is really going to matter as Tyree Wilson has become more of a just rotational piece, which is obviously not the plan when you draft the guy so high. I don't think you have a lot of fallback options. Like, you need these guys to all hit and come back and be the players you acquired them to be, because I don't know that there's a lot of depth here.
Well, there's not. And you're kind of, I don't want to say stuck with, but you're so highly invested in Tyree Wilson. Like, he's going to be at a certain point in the pecking order, right? But the guys like Charles Snowden, which is cool to see Charles Snowden maximize his opportunities after, like, we scouted him coming out of Virginia, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's several years of kind of bouncing around before he did anything.
But that's your edge 4 right now. Yeah. And then your edge 5 is who? You want to give it to Andre Carter? Like, it's not a serious answer to be a part of your rotation, right? So you're really banking on Crosby being healthy and eating all the snaps to be a snap sponge.
Which he can.
Which he can, and he should, right? Like, as long as he's healthy, he should be out there for as many snaps as he's capable of playing. But the other side of that, you're on pretty rocky ground as far as Kuntz, when he's healthy, you should be really excited about it. Like, he's made some great developmental leaps, but we just don't know where he's going to be at the start of the year. And then there's also a durability conversation to have with him as a whole. Yeah. And that's before you get inside where, I mean, Christian, you want to talk about bullets, snap sponges. Yeah. Christian Wilkins, he's playing 850 snaps a year his first 5 seasons in the NFL. Gets to Las Vegas, plays 23% of the snaps. Has the foot injury that you talk about a big guy who he's an older guy for being in year 6 or year 7. He's 29. So I think the days of Wilkins playing 850 snaps should probably be over if you want to get the best version of Christian Wilkins moving forward. So that puts pressure on the young guys in Pegues and Tonka Hemingway to be, I don't want to say meaningful, but like they should ideally be a part of that rotation for the Raiders this offseason or this season.
And Adam Butler's best ability has always been pass rush.
Right. A little bit. I feel like I don't want to call him a specialist, but he's a passing down guy. Yeah. Right.
Which I think helps with Leki Fotu coming in as a reserve player that'll fit into this rotation to give them, some more beef up front for the run defense. So we're a little concerned about the depth here up front, and obviously monitoring guys coming back from injuries. But the other side of that coin is Crosby, Wilkins, Kuntz playing to their potential. That's exciting. Like, that is legitimate exciting. Crosby, like, one of the best defensive players in the entire NFL. And I think a lot of teams kind of romanticized over maybe trading for him. And they said, you know what? Here's a big fat contract extension. You're not going anywhere. All right, so we had a pretty good conversation about the trenches, the defensive back seven. Well, we'll explore that here in just a moment. Folks, be sure to stick with us. How about this kicker and punter tandem of Daniel Carlson and AJ Cole? Arguably the best in the league.
I was going to say one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Want to get that out of the way before we talk about this back seven, you know.
I have not looked at your grades, so I don't know what you gave these guys. So my question for you is this. Out of the back seven players, linebackers, safeties, and corners, how many sufficient level starters or better do you have?
2.
Both the safeties?
Both the safeties, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're in the exact same boat as far as how we view this group. A lot of questions in the second level of the defense and on the perimeter. A lot of questions. A lot of youth, right? Where you have Darian Porter as a third-round pick. Both Ja'Cory Bennett and DeCamarion Richardson were rookies last year.
Yep.
You bring in Darnay Holmes. You bring in Eric Stokes. Those are both guys that are kind of in the physical prime of their careers, but they never really lived up to what you thought maybe their expectations and potential was. Stokes is a former first-round pick in Green Bay. I like that bet for them a lot. They kind of a toolsy player. Now, he's had his own durability issues, but that can be a really nice hit for the Raiders if he ends up working out and playing to his potential, but it hasn't happened yet, and it didn't happen in Green Bay. So I look outside and second level. I've got a ton of questions about what they have, what the ceiling is. I'm terrified of them playing Devin White and Elandon Roberts as your potential 2 stack backers. I'm really hoping either Tommy Eichenberg or Amari Gaynor makes a big leap. I'm not going to assume that Jalen Smith ends up returning to Notre Dame form way back when 10 years ago. I was surprised to see he sign, but I think that tells you a little bit about the linebacker situation here with the Raiders.
Yeah, I think you are counting on way too many best case scenarios to be true for this to not be a liability for this football team. There's a lot of athleticism. That's one thing I will say. I like that there's a ton of speed. There's no question about that, particularly at the cornerback position. And I think there's a lot that we need to learn about a lot of players, whether that's Ja'Cory Bennett or DeCamarion Richardson, of course, Darian Porter, the draft pick this year. Their ceiling, that's all exciting, but there's not a lot of proof of concept here. And even a guy like Eric Stokes has not really found consistency. Obviously, he's skilled and talented, but there has been an opportunity for him to be available and play at a reasonably high level. We haven't seen that yet. And I don't think this tandem of Elandon Roberts and Devin White just doesn't really work for me at all. Elandon Roberts is best as just like a downhill plug on rundowns, and he'll blow up, guards and fullbacks, but there's not a lot of range or coverage ability. And Devin White, outside of just shooting gaps, has been a lost cause in this league. So there's a lot to be concerned about there. But the best part of this back seven is clearly the safety tandem of Isaiah Pola-Mau. A great find there, right? Got his big opportunity last year, and they signed him to an extension. And I think that says a lot whenever you have a new regime taking over and they buy into breakout like that. I think that's a really good sign. And then Jeremy Chinn, who, after some injury years in Carolina, goes to Dan Quinn in Washington and kind of gets things back on track and gets a decent deal from the Raiders. And I think very comfortably that safety tandem is the best part of this back seven.
Yeah. And I think Chinn can help to mitigate some of those second level coverage concerns and playing low, playing on the second level, where I don't want to say you go big nickel, but I think you can go, because I don't really like their options as at third safety right now, but
yeah,
maybe that's a spot where you can more easily find another player that would free Chinn up to do some of that second level stuff a little bit more regularly. But I think that's where he's really built to shine. So I think you look at the athletic profiles and the strengths of their projected off-ball linebackers, and I think Chinn can complement that really well when you get into obvious passing situations.
I do wonder if they should be considering some of the safeties that are out there on the market so that they can do exactly what you said, is playing Chinn on that second level more. Because I don't really think you want Roberts or Devin White on the field on passing downs. I think this team needs to find a dime package here. I think the key to unlocking that is probably by adding a safety that you think can play in deeper alignments so that you can space the field a little bit differently underneath.
Well, and I think the most ironic thing about that is when you consider where the Raiders ended up having success last year, part of that was taking a former college safety in Divine Diablo and developing into a second-level player, right? So that's the other big thing that really stands out to me with the Raiders, and obviously the regime change and Pete Carroll coming in, and I think they have the third youngest roster in football right now. They're one of 3 teams with an average age on the roster that's younger than 26 years old. You can tell. There's a lot of green. There's a lot of pink on this roster as far as greens are rookies, and pink is incomplete evaluations because they're players that haven't been in the league long enough for us to have firm conviction on yet. This defense had said goodbye to Nate Hobbs, Trayvon Moehrig, Jack Jones, Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo, John Jenkins leaves. That's a lot of experience, and that was a lot of kind of your marquee players. So, and then there's obviously the offensive overhaul that exists with the quarterback change and bringing in Jeanty and kind of the wide receiver infusion because they didn't have a lot to work with last year. The offensive line is really the only stable thing out of this group right now. And even that, they brought in 3 new names. So it certainly feels like a foundational year, and having that many young players. And we talk about the best thing about Pete is, building the culture, right? And I think this team has kind of needed that. And I think the fact that they're leaning into a lot of young players, we're talking about signing a safety. I think you have to have the right kind of player, right? It makes sense. They went older at quarterback, but they went older at quarterback with a guy who knows the culture that Pete Carroll wants to instill in the football team.
Yeah. I think you can ask yourself questions, okay, with the state of where things are, why would you go Pete Carroll and Geno Smith? I think it's exactly what you're talking about. It's all about setting a foundation here for a long-term turnaround here. And I think that's different. Like a lot of times you see, let's go find the hotshot young coach. Let's go and get, a high pick at quarterback maybe before we're ready for it. And the Raiders are not doing that. And I'm curious to see how this build plays out because there is a responsible approach here that I can appreciate. They're going to have to navigate some shortcomings on their roster, but I think the Pete Carroll, Geno Smith tandem can really help transition this team out of the perpetual cycle that they've been in of changing leadership and not having a stable enough roster across the board. And they're obviously in a really good division. This division had 3 playoff teams last year, and it certainly feels like those other 3 teams have taken steps this offseason to perhaps be even better. And I think the Raiders are aware of that, and I think they have a pretty good plan. I don't know that I'm making big promises for year 1, but I think there's a good outlook here for how they can get out of this cycle that they've been stuck in.
The analogy I'll make, we've made a number of dad references here on the show. Makes me think of the episode Baby Race from Bluey. You know which one that one is?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. You just got to run your own race if you're the Raiders right now. Don't be comparing to the other kids and how fast they learn to roll over or learn to walk.
Yep.
You got to make sure that you run your own race, tend your own yard. Don't compare. Get the foundation set and really be invested in doing it right. Because if you start chasing the other teams and you look over and you see the neighbor's kid is running already and yours is still just crawling, you're going to start doing some reckless stuff trying to get caught up. Take care of yourself because it's been a long time now, like you said, of the Raiders kind of being stuck in this trap. And now is the time. I think there's a lot of really promising steps in the infancy of a build to do it uniquely your own way and do it so that it can work, but don't rush it.
That's a heck of a way to tie this conversation together. Bluey reference that absolutely lands.
And you know who wears blue? The Toronto Maple Leafs, to bring this podcast full circle. How you like that? That's going to do it for us here today on the show. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino, we appreciate you guys for checking out Locked On NFL Scouting. We have the Broncos tomorrow coming your way into a playoff team already this week on a Tuesday. So you hope you come back. Check us out tomorrow as we dive into the Denver Broncos, Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and look at their roster assessment for the 2025 NFL season. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino, we're out of here. Talk to y'all again soon.